Hello everybody, it's a beautiful day in the bee yard, and today I'm going to go over how to winter nucleus colonies. I have two on this stand and they are facing, their entrances face in opposite directions. That was intentional. I set it up that way in the beginning of the year, and it facilitates the next step in this process of wintering, and I'm going to go through that with you in a little bit of little detail. So I'll show you the other side of this. The entrance, of course, on the other box is facing the opposite direction, as you can see. So these two colonies, I had them in my yard. They're beautiful nucleus colonies. They have plenty of stores, really populous boxes, and I had intended to use these for resources in the bee yard over the season, but if I didn't need them, so now it's time to make preparations to save them for overwintering, because I want to make sure that they survive, or try to make sure that they survive. And I'll show you the way I do that. It's an interesting sort of wintering box that I have, and so I'll bring you into the workshop. I'll go over the features of that wintering box. It's something simple. It's something you can make also, and then we'll come back out to the yard, and then I'll put these two nucleus colonies in that box in preparation for winter. Okay, so now we're in the bee workshop, and what I'm going to be going over at this point is the hardware that I'm going to use to winter these two nucleus colonies together. And basically, I'm going to change them from standalone nukes to a side-by-side configuration. So I'm going to want to go over the different parts of the box and give you kind of an overview of how you would assemble it. And maybe you can make one on for yourself, or you can purchase these boxes from different supply houses, and they allow you to put two nucleus colonies in one deep. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so here's some of the equipment we're going to need to overwinter both of these nukes into one deep. And it starts with this bottom board. In our case, here's what it looks like. As I mentioned earlier, this is a standard bee supply item. And this one allows nucleus colonies to be set into one length deep, and there's two entrances, and they fly out opposite ends of the box. So that's the way our nukes are actually configured out in the yard. You saw that earlier. And so this will be nice, because then we can just transition the bees into this box, and they will be accustomed to flying out in the directions that this box will guide them to. All right, so this is the first piece of specialty item. You can make one of these things, or you can buy it through the supply houses, as I mentioned. This particular bottom board is designed to work with a box that they sell also at the supply houses, which will allow you to put 4 frames in each side of this. So there will be 2 4-frame nukes. In my yard, I raised 5-frame nukes, so I modified the box, the top box, so that it can accommodate 5 frames at each side. And I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so here's the box that I modified. You notice that there's 2 kerfs running in it on each side. I did that with my table saw. And what that does is it's much narrower than the one that they sell. So the kerf is much narrower, and it allows just enough extra space so I can get 5 frames at each side using this piece of plywood that I separate the 2 halves of the box with. So you can see it goes right in here, like this. Nice tight fit. And now you can begin to see how the box is separated into 2 nucleus colonies. All right, so put that up there. Let me show you how the frames fit in to the box. So these are drawn comb. I wanted to give you a drawn comb example so you can see that this actually does work for 5 frames. So you start to put them in. Now, one of the criteria is that these shoulders on both sides are very clean, right? You want to make sure that part is clean, because that gives you enough bee space between the frames, but it doesn't push the frames apart. And since the space is very conserved in this box, you don't have a lot of room, you have to make sure that those shoulders are clean. All right, so this one is not really that clean. Let's put it in and see what happens. There's one. There's 2, drawn frame. then 3, 4, and here's the 5th. Now I want you to notice that on the 5th frame, the shoulder is loaded with wax or propolis. It's probably propolis in this case. So that widens the top bar, shoulders, to the point where I wouldn't be able to get it into this box. So it just doesn't fit. All right, so when I clean that, which I'll do, nice clean shoulder now. Let's see if it'll go in. So here we have it. 5 frames in a single side. Same thing on the other side. So you can put a 5 frame nuc into one of these boxes. Now, if you don't want a 5 frame nuc, if you don't want this tightness of this 5 frame, you can start your nucs in your yard and overwinter them as 4. Start them as 4 frames and overwinter them as 4 frames. No problem. Okay, so the next piece of equipment I mentioned is this specialty bottom board. This just goes right on top of that, like that. Now I'm going to switch and show you another box I have. So here's another one, same configuration. Got the kerf center board. In this case, I have 2 things I've modified here that I want to make you aware of. First of all, I screwed the bottom board on to the deep. Makes it much easier to handle, and just 2 screws, 1 on each side, plenty enough to hold the bottom board to this deep box. Now these deep boxes, since they're specially modified, are basically boxes that I set aside for special applications like this, so I can screw a bottom board to it because I'm not going to use it for anything else except for overwintering nucs. Makes it a little bit more difficult to clean if I have to get in there and clean it out, but then I can also always just easily remove the screws and clean the bottom board. So here we go. All right, so there it is. Looks like that. The first piece of equipment that I added to this box are these support cleats. Now these support cleats hold the sleeve up that I'm going to show you later on. They're at a specific height so that the sleeve and all of the ancillary insulation that I'm going to put on top of these nucs fit, and then I can put a telescoping cover over the top of all of that. So that's something that you have to figure out about how high you want the sleeve to be. I'll show you my example. So here's a sleeve that I made to fit over this once the nucleus colonies are in it. It's made out of 1-inch polyisocyanurate. In your case, to avoid having to make a specialized telescoping cover, you make this sleeve out of 3/4-inch insulation. It really will facilitate the process and smooth it out for you. Make it much easier for you to manage. Okay, so once, of course, you have the facilities to make one in a shop or something like that special, and then you can use 1-inch insulation. Because if you want to make it even larger, you can use 2-inch insulation. Sidewall insulation is not as important as the top insulation, and you'll see I go to a great extent to make sure that in these nucleus colonies, especially smaller colonies, that I put a lot of insulation over the top. Right? So here's the sleeve on the box, cleats holding it up. The front entrances are clear, and we have lots of space between the top edge of the hive body and the end of the insulation. I'm going to fill that up with other components I'm going to show you later. So the first one that I'm going to fill it up with is feeding shims. So these are standard. These happen to be 3/4 of an inch thick. These will accommodate a liquid bag of feed or a sugar cake, something like that. And you might want to put that on it for emergency food at some point during the winter, if need be. So that would require your inspections and your attention during the winter time to figure that out. But if you don't put some kind of shim in there, you'll have no space to feed the bees with insulation right down on the top frame. So that would work well. So I made these shims, and they go 1 in each. here they are. And they've used a little bit of that room up on that sleeve. So now the next piece of material that goes in is 2 inches of insulation. And I specially coated this insulation with some foil tape to keep the bees from chewing it out. They love to do that, and I want to prevent that. And the way you do that is to just put some foil tape over that surface. Holds on there really nice, keeps the bees from chewing it out. One on each side. So what you're left with then is using up almost all of that space on the insulation sleeve. There's about 3/4 of an inch left. Now you can lower the cleat so this comes out almost level. In my case, I sort of guessed at where that cleat would go after I measured the depth of my sleeve that I already had made, and I put them where I thought I would have plenty of room to add all the other components. And it turns out that I have 3/4 of an inch left. Put down lower if you want. So that's my first thought I want to leave you with, is that you have to manage all these dimensions so that you end up with something like this, where there's enough space to put everything in that you want to put in, and then there's something left over so that you can just slide your telescoping cover right over the top. Right now, again, if this were 3/4 inch insulation on sleeve, you could buy a standard top from Better Bee, and it'd go on just like this. And then you would have it. That's the end of it. There would be 2 colonies in there. We put a little mouse guard over the entrance, flat mouse guard like that. I use a couple stainless steel thumbtacks to put that in. Put one on each side, keep the mice out of there. And the advantages of this box are many. It has wonderful side and end insulation. It has great insulation value over the top of nucleus colonies, and they need that. Nucleus colonies are small, and I think that they do well when they're fully insulated, and you take the time to make certain that they're not using a lot of their resources just to keep the colony warm during the winter. Then of course they're side by side, so their heat is combined, and it works well to keep them cozy in there and alive during the winter. All right, so the next step is to take this whole contraption out to the bee yard and put a couple of live nucs in it so you can see how it is to set them up over the winter time. And it's very valuable to have nucleus colonies come into spring, especially if some of your larger colonies or any one of your colonies needs a queen or something early in the year. All right, so they're a great investment to sustainable beekeeping. So let's go out to the yard and put some nuc colonies in. Okay, so here we are in the bee yard, and I'll flip the camera in a minute, and you can see the nucleus colonies that you saw earlier. And I'm now going to put these 2 nucleus colonies into our insulated box. There's a few considerations you have to make on a day like today. It's almost the middle of October. There's no bee forage around. You have to be very, very cautious that we don't start a lot of robbing in the yard. So we're going to have to make sure we're very observant. We want our actions to be very deliberate and quick, not bee destruction quick, but so that we can get this 1 box at a time into this split arrangement, and then get them settled and put the other box in. So I'll get started with that in a minute, and you'll see that process. Okay, so here's the 2 nucleus colonies that we talked about earlier. And these are the 2 that we're going to go put into this box. This one flies this way. That one flies out in the other direction. And so we're going to get started by putting this nucleus colony in this side of the box. And then when that's done, we'll be able to remove this off the stand, place this new box down on the stand, and then get started with this colony. Nice smoke at the entrance. Give them just a little time to realize what's coming next. I have 2 high tools with hooks on the end. I'm going to use them to leverage these frames out of this colony, because even in this nuc box, they're in pretty tight. No queen on the inner cover. So I'm going to put these frames in this box in exactly the same order I take them out. You use the hook on the other side of the frame. You're then capable of pull that frame nice up and even. And this is a nice honey frame they put up. Take it out nice and slow. Once we get this first frame out, we're going to be in good shape. There you go. Beautiful honey frame. Almost both sides filled with honey. All right, so let's get moving. You can't spend too much time looking at things. Remember when I showed you in the shop that the frame shoulders have to be clean? This is a good time to do that. So I will take a little off of this one. A little bit of wax I removed on the other one. Place it in there nice and tight. Now I just separate the frames very gently and move them in one at a time. It's a great nucleus colony. No brood. And I would expect that. Some nice bees. And we're going to give them a little more smoke. So far we're getting lucky. There's not a bunch of other activity from bees in the yard. They will get interested. Just a beautiful colony of bees. And there's the queen. I don't know if you can see her running around there. Whoop. She's right in that frame. So let's get her right in there so we know she's safe. Get a little pressure from yellow jackets this time of year. We broke a little honey on this frame, so that's going to be a little test. Nice stores. Okay, one more frame and our nuc box transition will be completed. Again, decent amount of stores. These frames, this colony is ready to overwinter. All right, it's going in very tight, so let's push these over. Squash them. See if we get that frame. Real slow. Don't crush any bees. All right, so there you have it, the first nucleus colony. There's lots of, the first nucleus colony is almost, there's a lot of bees hanging around in the box. I'll show you how we deal with that in a minute. But now we have the advantage of being able to take this off and put this first box. Now we can put, these are getting a little wild, down on the stand. Now I'm going to dump those bees into this side that I just put the frames in. But what I don't want is to dump a bunch of bees in the other side. So I'm going to put the top over the other side, so when I dump bees, that side remains empty. Now, there you go. A little bit of coaxing, and now the bees should be, when I dump them, they'll all be on this side. Right, so I'm going to just bounce the box on the ground a little bit, almost like installing a package, and then just dumping the bees in there. See how many more bees there are? There's still a few bees in here. Okay. Now I'm getting some activity in the yard. So I'm going to put the feeder shim on. And I'm going to put the insulated top on this side. So there it is. This side is relatively free of bees. The bees are beginning to understand that this is their new entrance, right? So it's really not far away from their old entrance, so they're fine with this new box. So now I'm going to proceed to do the same thing on the other side, and then when I finish doing that, I'll come back and just close it up with the sleeve on it. Okay, so here it is, and it's completed. I didn't show the installation on the other side. It went pretty much the same as the first side I showed. And as you can see, there's lots of activity. The bees have got to get used to this box and where it's located. There's I slid it over a little bit, so both colonies are sort of oriented to where they were flying wise. That makes a big difference, especially this time of year. You don't want to lose a lot of bees when they're trying to find their home. So that's this side. The other side was installed relatively the same. So there's a lot more bees in this side of the box, so they're going to have to spend some time. I wanted to show you what it looks like at this point because it's a little messy. When you first put the bees in, they have to have a chance to figure things out, and this looks like a swarm. Right? There were so many bees in this side of the nuc on this side was really highly populated. So the advantage, again, 2 beautiful nucleus colonies, really worth saving because of valuable queens inside both of them. They've managed to store up lots of winter food, so they know what they're doing. You know, they've got the genetics to survive. And now in this nice little box, we'll hope for the best. Okay, so that concludes it from the build inside the garage into the installation. I hope you enjoyed it, and try it out on your bees.